Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of Market Talk. And with us this time we have Shine Catering Systems MD, Julian Shine, and Colette Fox, who is the Program Manager at Pro Veg. And if anyone's not familiar with that, that helps school kitchens to deliver plant-based meals. So we'll quiz you about that shortly, Colette, but I'm going to start off with Julian, if I may. So at the moment, the catering equipment and the professional kitchen design is a little bit fraught with market issues, I would say. So obviously there's a lot of supply chain issues going on. So can you tell me a little bit about how Shine is managing to deal with those sort of challenges right now?
Yeah, it's there's lots of opportunities out there. So, we should not just complain. There are opportunities. It's a buoyant market at the moment. However, it is very difficult trying to manage the supply chain at the moment. We understand that it is a worldwide problem. When you see Shanghai going back into lockdown, then you realize it's only going to get worse. It's not going to be fixed anytime soon. It is difficult. I would say that we spend a very significant proportion of our time at the moment trying to re-specify previously specified goods that may have been on order with a manufacturer for over 6 months and coming in with days notice prior to delivery to a site, or it's not available and it won't be available for maybe 2-3 months. I think realistically, if we're able to provide the information to our clients, the building contractors, early enough, it gives everybody a chance to mitigate the effect of the collapse of the supply chain. I would say some of the organizations are getting the communication correct, others aren't. And the ones that tell you day before or day after it should have arrived on site that it's not going to be there, they're the ones that really need to have a good look at themselves at the moment.
I completely understand it. It must be very frustrating. So, say in terms of kind of dealing with these long lead times, how are you managing that? Are you kind of managing customer expectations when it comes to the delivery of their projects and individual bits of appliances?
Yeah, I think it's all according to the detail of the program of works that we're submitting at the time of contract award. Quite often now we're putting 26-week lead-in times on certain pieces of equipment. If it's coming from Australia, it's probably going to have 26 weeks on it. And it's managing these expectations, whereas previously a combination oven may have taken 4 or 5 days to arrive on site. Now it could be 20 weeks. So it is the earliest possible we can get the communication out about the expected arrival on site and when we've got to place firm orders. I think our clients, they've got used to dealing with a very proactive supply chain. I think, as an industry, we've all worked just in time for too long, and just in time just isn't in time anymore. We've got to change the way we're doing things. But I think there will be a case that there'll be a higher level of stock holding at some point in the future. That's not now because it just can't be made at the moment. But I think it's all about the communication, and communicating early enough, you can mitigate the effects of pretty much all of these supply chain failures. However, it is not just us communicating, it's our supply chain also communicating.
Julian, do you get a sense that this is impacting the dynamics between suppliers and distributors in the market? Is it sort of testing the loyalty of some of those relationships?
It's not so much testing loyalty, it's basically disabling loyalty. When you're no longer able to get the equipment, there's only one thing for it. You've got to substitute with something that is available. So yeah, it really has changed the dynamics. It is going to carry on for the foreseeable future, and I think the pragmatic will realise that it's not distributors actually abandoning their relationships. It's an actual absolute necessity at the moment for us to carry on supplying our customers.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Great start. I'm going to bring Colette into the conversation now, and we'll have a little talk about Pro Veg. It's a company that works with local authorities and school caterers to increase the health and sustainability of school food. You're heavily involved in the school plates program, which I understand is set to reach quite a significant milestone this year. So do you want to give us some insight to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are Pro Veg UK. We're part of Pro Veg International. Our kind of sole focus in the UK is our school plates program. Like you said, we work mostly with local authorities. We are doing menu review with them, so just helping them make tweaks on the language, the positioning of dishes, right through to recipe development and, you know, face-to-face and online training. And we're currently working with about 25 major sort of catering partners. Most of those are local authorities. And since we began, which was we're just kind of in our 5th year now, we've just hit the 5 million meals swapped mark, which is amazing. So that's 5 million meals that have been swapped either from meat-based to meat-free or plant-based. And we're aiming by the end of this year to get that figure to 15 million meals. So we're pretty ambitious. But in the last sort of 6 months of last year, we doubled the size of the programme, and we're just seeing a massive demand for our help. You know, there's a huge willingness to want to do this. It's kind of being driven by the climate crisis, probably more so than the health crisis. But, you know, a lot of councils, a lot of schools don't know where to start, and we're here to kind of show them that it's pretty simple stuff and kind of hold their hand along the way and get them moving, you know, nudging along the journey, as it were.
Fantastic.
So Colette, when someone comes to you, like when a school caterer has aspirations for delivering a sort of healthy plant-based menu, what are the kind of immediate operational hurdles that they face over this?
To be honest, I don't really think there are massive operational issues, which is may seem too good to be true. But, you know, what we're suggesting is food that we all eat all the time, and we have done pretty much since the beginning of time. We're just saying on certain dishes, take out the meat and take out the dairy. So it's not like a brand new thing. It depends how you label it. But essentially it's food that we all eat, but with some bits taken out. So from a preparation point of view, not much impact at all. In fact, a lot of the feedback we get is that our recipes are much simpler, much quicker to prepare. I think you've always in these environments got to take into account allergens and keeping certain foods separate, but you've got a much less risk of any contamination with plant food. So no, hopefully simpler, less refrigeration required, all those, it's a bit of a win-win.
Excellent. So, I mean, just kind of bringing the kitchen design element into that. So do you see like the drive towards a more plant-based menu impacting the way that school kitchens are designed and planned? Does it require a different approach in terms of preparation or cooking or the equipment that school caterers would normally be used to? To
be honest, again, no, and it's not feedback we get. I have asked the question recently of some of our partners, and they've all kind of said, no, it doesn't really impact anything. I mean, I think the point I made, you could potentially, a lot of plant-based ingredients that school caterers would use are dry store, ambient ingredients. So potentially how you store things may be slightly different. You may have a higher ratio of dry stores space and less refrigeration, but in the overall scheme of things, schools aren't going entirely plant-based. All we're doing is saying, have an option, get more kids eating your vegetarian option that you're already making. So it's very subtle, and it's typically a fairly slow process of baby steps. So nothing big and scary for them to worry about in terms of investment or changing how they do things. We're, if anything, trying to make it simpler for them and that they have less things that they need to prepare.
Sure. Julian, I know Shine has been involved in lots of education sector projects over the years. I think Colette mentioned there, it seems that even a drive towards the plant-based side of menus doesn't necessarily necessitate huge rejig in terms of kitchen design. But I just wondered, do you see any kind of key trends in that particular market at the moment when it comes to the way that kitchens are being built?
The key there would be the food service ethos. If we're looking at a whole foods food service ethos, you've got the preparation facilities there to enable the prime cooking or regeneration of the food. In school catering, nearly always prime cooking, not regeneration. So all the facilities will be there in the average school to enable that change of menu. However, if you're looking at a lot of schools over the last 5 years, 10 years that have been based on a freeze cook or a freeze regeneration menu, then some of these are absolutely devoid of any preparation facilities whatsoever. So it would make me wonder how a slightly different menu would be delivered there, unless again it's pre-manufactured and frozen, which tends to be a much more expensive way to feed people.
Sure. Okay. And just to give us an overview of where Shine is at, you're present in quite a number of sectors, aren't you? The hotel sector and public sector and so on. How has the business evolved since the pandemic? Have you sort of moved in one direction more than others, for example?
No, I think as the world has opened up again, I think all sectors have started to perform equally. I don't think there's a huge change. I think if you're looking at the business and industry in London, for instance, that market, I think we're seeing a slight change towards biosciences and tech, away from the banking and insurance and legal practices that were most common. The biosciences and the tech, they seem to be relocating to central London away from Cambridgeshire. Purely, I think, because the kids, the bright young things that they have or they aspire to have working for them, want to work in London. They don't want to work in Cambridgeshire.
Okay.
Okay, very interesting. Julian, is there any particular kind of demands or trends that you're seeing in the market right now? What kind of kitchens are operators wanting more than anything else?
Very different. Within the business industry sector, we are seeing catering facilities being fed by CPUs. We're seeing whole food ethos catering facilities. We're seeing regeneration facilities. All sorts of different mixes coming into play at the moment. I think the integration with let's say a building's services are more key now, and we're involved with some contracts whereby multiple kitchens may be fed from a CPU within one building. I think they're looking to reduce the amount of traffic on the roads in London, understood, and it seems to probably be the way forward.
Yeah, excellent. We'll come back to you shortly, but just to bring Colette back into the conversation. So ProVeg actually delivers training to local authorities and caterers on plant-based cooking. So what have you learned from these sessions so far? Are there any common challenges that are emerging?
That's a great question. So I think there's a general feeling of when we do these workshops. There's a lot of skepticism often at the beginning of the session. So we always start off asking people, we want to just understand where people are on this journey. We ask the question, what do you think about plant-based food? And tell people to be honest, tell us if they hate it. Do they think it's expensive, tasteless, boring, difficult to prepare? Just throw it at us. And generally, it's once people understand why this is good, why it's not actually something really new, it's just been given a new label, and how to do it, and feel a bit inspired and like they understand it and they get it. This is going to make children healthier, it's going to tackle our obesity crisis, and it's going to tackle the climate crisis. They start to come on board, and then once they start cooking, they realise it's not difficult, and this is kind of stuff they're doing already. And I think the real joy is at the end of the session, where everybody gets to try the food that they've prepared and generally have a quite different opinion to the one they started the session with. So it really is giving those caterers the understanding about why, showing them how to do it, and giving them the confidence that they can do it, and then they're away, and they're ambassadors to pass that on to the children that they're serving the food to. So it's all very simple stuff that we do. Sometimes I feel like it's so easy, but it's so effective, and it's there's a lot of positive appetite for, pardon the pun, for doing this and embracing it. So we can very easily and quickly get people kind of pointing in the right direction and making this food, and then adding to their repertoire of what they can make, trying things out. So it's pretty positive stuff to be doing.
How would you describe the scale of the challenge you face in terms of getting school kitchens to adopt plant-based menus? Do you feel there'll ever be a time when every school will offer a kind of meat-free menu, or is that just completely unrealistic?
I think it's totally realistic. I think we're not there yet. We've got a long way to go, and probably we're just kind of, scratching the surface here. I mean, we're working with 25 partners. They're mostly in England and a couple in Wales. I think there's about 149 local authorities just in England that have responsibility for school food in some way, plus Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, where we're not yet working, but we hope to. There's about, I don't know, over 1,000 multi-academy trusts. There's all the private catering companies. So there's all these different models of delivery. So, we're sort of tackling those that potentially we can have the biggest impact with first, the local authorities where they're dealing with hundreds of schools. But a lot of, we see an awful lot that are starting to work with us that already have meat-free days, which is great. So they're only serving vegetarian food. Some of them that come to us aren't, and we can kind of help them on that journey to do that. They are restricted slightly. Each country has its own set of nutrition guidelines. So we're predominantly working, and most of our partners are in England, so we're working with the English ones, and they have to serve meat at least 3 days a week. And they have to serve dairy every day. So there is a limit as to what's possible. So I guess the maximum they can go to at the moment is 2 fully vegetarian days. And they can offer a plant-based option every day. So that's what we're sort of encouraging. We're not saying don't have the meat. We know that's going to be there, and the point of this is to, reducing meat. We know that the National Food Strategy, the Climate Change Committee, all these kind of independent government advisors are all telling us the same thing, that essentially in the next couple of decades we need to be getting that meat and dairy down by between 1/4 and 1/3 to get to net zero. So anything caterers can do to do that and embed it with younger children so that they start to change their behaviours. But it's happening, and some of it's happening and people are shouting about it, and some of it's happening totally under the radar and people don't want to shout about it and they don't want to draw attention to what they're doing, but it's happening. And we're just kind of here helping people along the way if they want that support. So it's exciting to see what is possible, and as caterers start to see the reaction from children and the reaction from parents, it encourages them to want to push it further and do a bit more.
Well, one of the big challenges for the restaurant sector in general has been the rising cost of pretty much everything, but especially food and ingredients. What impact has that had on your activities over the last year? Because presumably, the cost of vegetables has been increasing across the board.
Yeah, I think you're right. It affects everybody working in food. Again, another kind of positive story, to be honest, is plant foods are generally cheaper than other foods. Of course, if you buy processed vegan foods or plant-based meat alternatives, they tend to be more expensive. But lentils, chickpeas, All these things tend to be cheaper than buying chicken or beef or what have you. So we find it's not the reason we do what we do, but we find a kind of happy byproduct of it is that our partners save money. Sometimes they're saving up to 20% on their procurement costs by, just by introducing a few more dishes over the course of the week. And, we are very cost conscious. We know it's a huge factor and that everything is being cut. So last year we created a recipe resource, kind of free recipe resource for caterers, and it's all been costed out. So we have an idea what the sort of average cost of a primary school meal is, and we've made sure it comes in. I mean, it just naturally does come in well below that. We've based it just on supermarket prices, so they're obviously going to be more expensive. But yeah, the prices are going up, but I think comparatively it's still often the cheaper option and often the healthier option too, more nutritious. So yeah, it's all available in our resource, which is free on our website for anybody who wants to have a look at that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to bring Julian back into the conversation on pricing and costs as well, because Shine itself, you guys have a fabrications facility, so obviously you'll have to source stainless steel and other materials for that. How are you dealing with the skyrocketing costs of all of those kind of materials?
Yeah, well, I suppose most of the contracts that we undertake are fixed price contracting. So you can imagine the acceleration of the uplift in the cost of stainless steel has been, well, pretty scary. It's something that we've learned to deal with over the years, and we continue to do so. I think with the failure of supply chains, it's not just in catering equipment, it's also within construction. So we're finding the typical construction program extending quite extensively at the moment. A 1 year or 2 year program, could quite easily extend by 9 months to a year. So there's quite a huge effect potentially on the cost of the fabrication. It does scare you when you hear, due to energy costs, that mills that produce stainless steel are closing because they can no longer afford to produce the stainless steel. But I think energy, again, is something that will have to be considered within catering for the foreseeable future. Probably a lot more focus on it, because we've drifted away from gas, understandably, because of the carbon footprint of gas. All the facilities are becoming electric these days, but how sustainable is that? The cost of electricity is absolutely extortionate at the moment, and I think it's not going to come back where it was. There's probably going to have to be some sort of alternative fuel, and I think hydrogen, networked hydrogen, is probably going to be the answer to the power in a lot of kitchens in the future.
So I was going to ask you, obviously so many operators are going to be facing crazy bills when it comes to all their utilities. So is that something that they've been discussing with you already? How can you help them with that in the specification of their kitchens?
We are discussing with more than one client at the moment the provision of hydrogen kitchens, hydrogen powered kitchens. The FEA have recently released a statement on how calculation for ventilation rates should be conducted for hydrogen. That was probably the last sticking block that we had. That was the last thing that was preventing us from talking confidently about the delivery of hydrogen catering facilities. But that's out the way now. We can press forward with that.
Okay. Do you feel there's enough, or is there any equipment out there to support the movement in that direction, or are we going to see an acceleration of that, do you think, going forward?
I think you'll see an acceleration of that. I think Falcon have taken the lead on the production of the hydrogen catering equipment, and I think they've got a range that's almost ready to go. So yeah, they've stolen a march there, but I think everybody will follow. That's not going to be with vehicles going electric in the UK and the power requirement for those, then there's not going to be enough electricity to go around. And I think that there will be networked hydrogen, and then hydrogen vehicles as well.
Okay, interesting times ahead. And in terms of what this all means for your business, Julian, the conversation around energy efficient kitchens has been around for years now. But I think what's happened over the last 4, 6, 8 weeks in terms of energy pricing really seems to have sort of concentrated the minds of everybody in business. Are you suddenly finding the conversation is changing with clients when it comes to sort of planning new catering facilities and the potential running costs of these?
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas we would always offer, in order to reduce the running costs of facilities, we would offer demand controlled ventilation. It was very rarely taken up, but all of a sudden now everybody wants to talk about demand controlled ventilation. We were talking about the modulation of the energy load to equipment in order to bring down the peak load within a facility. All of a sudden, everybody wants to talk about that as well. Okay, you're not using less, but you're actually avoiding triage costs by not going over the peak of what a building can receive. And quite a few facilities that we've been involved with lately, they've actually been cancelled because the building cannot get the power required for catering facilities. And perfect place for a catering facility. A client that was dedicated to delivering the right type of catering facility in that building just couldn't get the gas, couldn't get the electric. So there's got to be some sort of rebalancing of what's required.
Okay.
Right, yeah, I'm afraid we've actually run out of time now, but it's a bright new future ahead, whether it's plant-based menus or indeed hydrogen-powered equipment. So thank you very much, Julian. Thank you very much, Colette, for joining us today. And everyone out there, I hope to see you again in another episode of Market Talk. Goodbye.